A word of warning. If you're easily offended by cannibalism, death, torture, and fascinating facts about the human body, this series may not be for you. Therefore, listener discretion is advised. Cannibalism. Could you eat a whole human being? With the help of a doctor, a scientist, and a chef, I set out to see if it's possible. Cannibalism. Part 20. The sensory organs. Of all the parts of the body, nothing epitomizes a human more than the 4 sensory organs in the skull: the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the tongue. But do they fascinate serial killers and cannibals, or freak them out? Andrei Chikatilo, the Rostov Ripper, a serial killer, cannibal, and necrophile who murdered at least 52 women and children, it is said, chewed off their noses, cut out their tongues, sliced off their ears, and having become obsessed with the Victorian theory of retinal optography, many had their eyes gouged out, as he believed that the last image his victims saw before their death was recorded onto their retina. Weighing about 7.5 grams and 1 1/4 inches in diameter, the same as a ping pong ball, the eye is composed mostly of water, proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates, with the cornea made of collagen. Held in place by the optic nerve and the ocular muscles, eyes can only be removed by force or trauma. With the vitreous and aqueous humours made of salts, sugars, and proteins. Although Dr. Jim Stepani, the Yale-certified nutritionist, said, "Eyes contain an acidic solution which can make humans sick." Each eye contains 57 calories, the equivalent of 125 grams of apple, 12 grapes, or 2 marshmallows. In 2009, Angelo Mendoza Sr. attacked his 4-year-old son and ate his left eye. He was charged with child cruelty, torture, and inflicting an injury on a child, and was later found not guilty by reason of insanity. The eating of sheep's eyes is common across many cultures, and according to those who have, the trick to eating an eyeball is to keep it in your mouth for as long as possible. It's slightly squishy and delivers a succulent pop like a cherry tomato, with a rush of fatty flavours, with a gelatinous, spongy texture, like eating the fat and cartilage from a lamb chop, but a bit better. And whilst the inky black liquid, the aqueous, seeps down the throat, you're left with a hard, chewy lens, like a pig's trachea. Nice. Eyes gross us out. In 2022, when Jamila Figueiredo was caught, the headlines read, "Cannibal who ate the eyes of his victims captured." As apparently, it's fine to eat the eyes of different species, but it's newsworthy to eat the eyes of our own. James Serpell of the University of Pennsylvania said, "Eyes represent faces. It's through the face that we learn to recognize and empathize with others. Which could be why many killers cover, close, or remove the eyes of their victims after death. As once they're gone, they want that victim to appear less like a human." Ears. 1942, at the Battle of Wake Island. Veterans recalled seeing Marines walking round with Jap ears stuck to their belts. Lacking the symbolism of eyes, ears have long been a sick trophy of war. As the only visible part of the ear, the pinna is on average 2.5 inches long and weighs between 3 to 6 grams. Made of skin and rigid cartilage, an ear contains just 25 calories. But it has no flavour, and although it only takes 7 pounds of pressure to rip an ear off, its texture can only be described as tough and chewy. Most butchers state, the preparing of ears is tiresome, as they require the wax to be scraped out and the hairs to be singed to get rid of any scum, before they're boiled for 2 to 3 hours, then either sliced and heavily seasoned, as they can be quite bland, or coated in breadcrumbs and deep fried. Although, if you're looking for a bitter and buttery taste, leave the earwax in, as that contains 12.7 calories per gram. The nose. Across 1997 to 1998, Mikhail Malyshev, nicknamed the Perm Cannibal, was suspected of 6 murders, who he dismembered and ate. Having killed 16-year-old Natalia Sararova with an axe. Aided by his friends, they ground her flesh into mince to make pelmeni, a Russian dumpling. But with the threesome falling out, Mikhail bit the tip of his friend's nose. He chewed it, and then he swallowed it. Excluding the nasal bones, weighing roughly 14 grams, a nose contains about 45 calories. And although also made of cartilage, it's neither tasty nor hygienic, as we each produce about 1.5 litres of mucus a day, and the nose is our first defence against dust and allergens. And according to a study by a medical school in Southern California, the average number of nose hairs in each nostril is 120 to the left and 122 to the right. Isn't that useful? When Andrei Chikatilo murdered his first victim, he bound her, he beat her, he stabbed her, and like many others, although he severed her nose, there was no evidence that he ate it. And can you blame him? The same can be said for the mouth, tongue and vocal cords, the last of the 4 sensory organs in our skull. In 1973, serial killer Edmund Kemper murdered his abusive mother with a claw hammer, and he slit her throat. In retaliation for years of humiliation, he cut off her head, screamed at it, smashed in her face, and being sick with her voice, he cut out her tongue and larynx and threw it down the waste compactor. But said to be too tough for the machine, it spat her tough vocal cords back up, of which Ed said,
"That seemed appropriate, as she bitched and screamed and yelled at me over many years."
As mentioned before, with the tongue being soft tender with a luxurious taste, Ed Gein having turned a pair of lips into a window shade drawstring, the windpipe as slightly chewy, and the larynx too tough for kitchen equipment. For good reason, few cannibals ever consider these organs as a suitable snack. And rightly, as although the eating of a thigh, a heart, or even the genitals is sexually motivated, the sensory organs are symbolic of who a victim was, as most of our memories are sensory experiences. The idea of retinal optography, where the last image a victim sees, being their death, is imprinted on their eyes, may seem ludicrous to a rational mind. That theory holds weight in amongst the more superstitious, with the nose retaining the last smell and the ears its last sound. Just as often in a mortuary, a corpse will seem to speak its last word. So is it really strange that a serial killer would attempt to destroy every piece of evidence, including the senses? Join me tomorrow to uncover even more body parts which a cannibal couldn't eat, or shouldn't eat.